the thing you're well known for is being the European boss,
Yeah.
right? And the European boss, I know we talked about it, and I heard you talked about it before, but what was the origins of the European boss? Like, how did that come about for you?
Yeah. It I will try and get this right because I've told it in a bunch of different ways, and every time I leave a podcast, I'm like, that wasn't like totally true. So I'm gonna get it into the bullet points. I had a tweet. I tried really hard with Twitter early on in comedy, and I had a tweet that referenced. It was like European bullet points, like has 350 days of vacation a year, and then American underneath that was like has to go to work with multiple stab wounds. That was the best tweet that I ever did in terms of the reaction that it got, and also comments, especially from Americans, of just like, yes, legitimately, I know people who have gone to work with open wounds. Or like, I just had, I gave birth, I still had the stitches in, I went to work anyway.
Ooh.
And I like knew that shit was crazy. And like, I didn't even have like a ton of experience with Europe at that time. I was just like an open mic comedian. I think I was like getting on the subway, and I was like, oh yeah, that's crazy. I guess like Europeans like have more vacation days than Americans going with like, open multiple stab wounds. Fast forward to the pandemic when everything comes to a stop. And I had COVID early on in the pandemic, but then I was like, I just don't feel safe performing indoors. So it was like, it gets to the winter, and I was like, I'm just not going to perform unless it's outdoors. I just didn't know a ton about COVID. Like, I was being very cautious about it. And so I started making videos, and I did like, old jokes. Like, I thought of a new one. I thought of like, it was a history joke, and it was like the U.S. like world history can be defined by two events, like the assassination of Franz Ferdinand and the day Justin Timberlake brought sexy back. Nonsense. 15 seconds. 500,000 views.
Wow.
Yeah, that was like, and I was like, that was the first thing I got on TikTok, because TikTok, like in the early days, it was like a slot machine, and that one hit. And then I had another one that was like comparing the 1900s to the 2000s, and it was like, like I did like an old timey voice, and I was like, I make a nickel a day, and like I can afford a house for every member of my family, which is true. Like, my grandpa gave people houses, and he just gave like one of his siblings a house, or like like real estate at that time was just like in the 1900s, like it was the greatest market that's ever existed at all times. And then
Right.
and then it was like 1900s, and then the 2000s. The comparison was like, if I break my ankle, like I'm going to be like bankrupt. I'm going to be homeless. And that one hit again, and that one got to like 1 million. And I was like figuring out that it was like, so then I saw that one. I was like, okay, that was a comparison like 1900s to 2000s. And then I was going through tweets, and I was like, let me do the Europe versus America thing. And the first one was like, like, hey, honey, what should we do with 178 vacation days this year? And then it goes to the American, and the American's like, sorry, I'm late. I just got hit by a car, but I'll make it up. I'll work through lunch.
Yeah.
That was like under 15 seconds, and that was like 7 million views on TikTok. And then I put it on Instagram, and it was like 5 million views on Instagram. And then like followings that just like 0 followers to 30,000 followers, like, or 10,000 followers in a day. And then on Instagram it was the same. And I was like, okay, let me do another one. And I think the next one, it was like about how, like, oh, well, like now like, my wife is Australian. She took like a gap year. Like, that's not something Americans usually do. Let me do one about that. Like,
Yeah.
you like, and there was an Australian parent, and it was a European parent who was like, you need to take a gap year. It's me and your mother fell in love. And then you go to the American, and the American's like, you're gonna go to college, you're gonna go into debt, and then you're gonna take the first job that you can get. And the kid was like, why? And then it was like, why? The American parent just was whipping up, getting his belt off just to whip the kid. And that one hit.
That's
and
hilarious.
so finally, and then I did a third one that didn't do as well. But then I was like, that European versus American thing, that's got some juice. And I think I know enough about this culture because my wife is Australian, and Australians like are really obsessed with work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a bunch of like European stereotypes and stuff, but I think what I was able to tap into is just this like, Europeans don't take it as seriously, all this like work shit, and like I originally was just doing every cultural thing, out relationship with alcohol, relationship with prison, all of the so there's just all of those topics between Europe and America. And I got to the end of that, and I was like, not to the end of it, but the ideas just were coming slower, and I just couldn't. I wasn't feeling like as excited by it, and I was like, let me go back to what made this series good in the beginning. The first one I did was related to work, so let me do European boss versus American boss. Let me try to get it to under 15 seconds again, and then that had the most momentum. And
Mm.
so I was like, I know about American working styles. I know it's psychotic corporate America. I hate it. I fucking hate it. It's so worthy of satire. These people take themselves so seriously. I had this job interview where I went in and it was a sales job, and the guy was like, they were just fucking alpha dogging me. Like, it was so strange. This guy goes, it was for Stryker Pharmaceuticals. I don't know if we want to cut this, but everybody that works there was a psychopath. I don't know if this is libel. We can cut it. I don't know. But anyway, um, I go in, and they're like, what, they're just asking me all these questions and stuff, and just really it was really adversarial. And this one guy, he goes what's the reason you get up in the morning? And I was like, to make the world a better place. And he was like, no, ask me. And I was like, why do you get up in the morning? He's like, money, so I can provide for my family.
Sales.
Dude. Yo, these people are not human. Whatever element of humanity that existed is now gone. They sacrifice it for 8 hours a day, and they think and then when I go home, I'll be a regular person. You are fundamentally hollowing out your soul every day. Every day is a new negotiation with the devil, where you give in more of yourself to the furthering of an exploitative, colonial, destructive force that's going to just kill all of us before 2050. You're drones, you're ants with hormones in service of, a queen ant that doesn't give a fuck if you live or die. That's genuinely how I feel about a lot of American corporate interaction. And I know that the same is true in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
but the Europeans can look at it and be like, that's not all there is. That's it. That's the difference. Is Americans are in that system, and they're like, this is it. This is it.
This is my way. This is my identity.
This is it. And Europeans look at Americans. Americans can't look at Europeans. They don't have a lot of Americans don't have the peripheral vision or life experience and the privilege of having peripheral vision and be like, oh, in Europe or in these other places, something different is happening. But Europeans do have the privilege to look to the side and be like, that's fucking psychotic.
Yeah.
What we do is nuts. It's not it's not like the fairy tale that I make it seem in the videos, but it is better in terms of work-life balance. It's worse in terms of GDP. You make sacrifices so that, and the passion that you can see me get revved up talking about the psychoticness of American corporate culture. I felt it for every second that I was interacting with these people.
Yeah.
I felt it in every meeting, what the fuck are we doing? This is all cosplaying as adults.
Yeah.
I understand the reasons that it exists, but it really grinds my gears and makes me so fucking angry that that's where we spend most of our time.
Mm.
And so that was where the series went next, because I had so many strong feelings about about those things. And then I think that's it. I think that's the best description of it.
Yeah, I mean, no, just even you just feeling that passion too. 'Cause
Yeah.
I worked in corporate America for a while, and just understanding that, especially as an artist too, right? Because I think the artist part really heightens that dissatisfaction or discontent for that type of style of life.
Yeah, or a question of why is it this way, or a sensitivity to bullshit.
Yeah,
It's
politics,
all bullshit. Yeah,
all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, just structures just for something to be upheld for whoever is the corporations or whatever that are basically creating this, right? I mean, just management of people that have conflicting interests, but the only combined one is money. And that it being fractured, the concept of money, but it obviously being fractured in terms of the amount you're offered and how you're valued based on the money or position or the perceived money you get, right?
Yeah.
You could be a vice president, but I mean,
Yeah.
there's vice presidents that make less than a a mid-level developer or something like that
Yeah.
in tech or something like that.
Yeah, and I think the difference is Europeans look at that and they're like, "That's," there's just kind of like a what? Like
Yeah.
that's it. That's the difference. Like, and Europeans like have I think more first, and it's systems too, right? But like Europeans, their systems for work-life balance are better. It's because that they value it, but they also had governments that were like more representative of their will, and they were able to apply pressure. And it's not a two-party system; it's a multi-party system. So you can like, the left comes in and the right comes in. Like, there's just more opportunity for change. I think everything is like stagnant now in like late stage capitalism or whatever. You're not going to see like revolutions. I don't know. You probably will, but so yeah, that was a. I'm still in that spot. I still every day I think of like, or I have a new interaction where I'm like, you know what? Like that's something that's like very different
Mm.
between Europeans and Americans. So yeah, future wise, like I don't know. I think there's more juice in this series. I'd like to get more like stand-up clips online, which I think is,
Yeah, definitely
kind of
next
the
up.
next project. We've been filming all these shows and stuff. So, um, but yeah, it's been very beneficial for me. Like social media is like for sure a net positive on my life.
I
I
have
can't,
seen it. Yeah.
yeah, I can't say that for everybody else.